and gentlemen, welcome back to Hirehood. Guys, it's been an incredible year so far. 2022, God has blessed us with abundance. Hirehood recruitment and our academy has gone off the roof. One of the things which we are struggling to do is our social media. We are not able to keep up the demand on the other side as well, where the business has taken over most of our time. So we had to put it aside. Fortunately, if you look at 2022, we were not able to create as many videos as we did in previous years. But anyways, guys, a lot of you guys have reached out to us. So guys, today's topic is most wanted topic, top 10 interview questions for a clinical nurse manager. So most of you guys, you are actually here in Ireland for the last 2 or 3 years, and you've been presented with an opportunity to become a clinical nurse manager, or you're thinking to step up the ladder, you're thinking to grow in your career from being a staff nurse to senior staff nurse and a clinical nurse manager, or you're even thinking to proceed to become a director of nursing. I mean, guys, I've seen it all. I've been from a staff nurse to a group clinical project manager. So I have seen every single roles in the last couple of years. So I think I have few tips and tricks for you to be successful in your next interview. So guys, watch till the end. I'm going to give you a pro tip. This tip, you can actually use it in any interviews, let it be a CNM interview or a DON, even a staff nurse interview. This tip, you can use it in any interview, and I can guarantee the interviewer will be super impressed with that tip. I have to say, I have carefully collected 10 top interview questions. So the first important thing that you have to keep in mind when you're applying for a clinical nurse manager or a senior staff nurse or an assistant director of nursing role, your role is basically on a floor level management. Before you become a director of nursing, your role is to manage a unit or your floor. So let's say you're a clinical nurse manager in a 60-bedded nursing home, and or a hospital, for instance. If you're given your unit or your ward, you will be in charge of that ward. You will have the nurses and senior nurses will be directly communicating with you. You will be their line manager. So you have to first of all understand the company structure or the organization structure. Let's say if it's a 60-bedded nursing home, the usual structure is like this. There will be a director of nursing, assistant director of nursing, 1 or 2 Adons, or then comes two or more clinical nurse manager, and then comes a senior staff nurse, staff nurses, HCA, senior HCAs and HCAs. So you know now where you stand. Your role as a clinical nurse manager, you'll be responsible from the HCAs up to senior staff nurse. So every single personnel under you will be reporting directly to you. That's the actual company structure. So first thing you have to understand is, what is the company structure? What is the structure of your nursing home or hospital or your ward, your unit, whichever workplace you're working for. Once you understand the company structure or your organization structure, you will understand what's the chain of command and who you would be reporting to. Let's say if a HCA or a staff nurse comes and reports to you with a problem or with a situation, you know, 90% of the time we will try to manage it on a floor level, but there are situations when it escalates, when it's beyond your capacity. So one thing I have to say is, once you know your company structure, once you know your organization structure, it's much easier for you to follow the next line manager and go and report it straight away. Guys, without much delay, I'm going to jump into 10 important questions that you will be asked when you're applying for a CNM role. Here we go. So the first question you might be asked is about medication management and medication management policy in general. So you have to read your medication management policy. If you don't have access to your medication management policy in your nursing home, your hospital or your ward, you can actually look up the HSE medication management policies. Even HIQA has a medication policy where you can actually read through it. Plenty of links which I've put in the description where you can read through all these policies in general. Medication management policy is a vast topic to even cover in a single video. Let's say I could talk about it for hours and hours, but what I have to ask you is, guys, please go and read your medication management policy, which is in-house or which is available online. I'm going to share a couple of links in the description. You definitely have to read through it. Medication management policy, there are critical topics like medication errors, medication reconciliation, medication audits, medication prescription, supplying, dispensing, administration, medication monitoring, medication review, storage, disposal. All these things can be asked while you're attending an interview. I mean, most of the things you know it, you're doing it day in, day out. There is no question about it. You have been practicing as a nurse for the last 10 years or 2 years or whatever period of time you're doing. The important thing you have to understand is all about confidence, guys. If you have the confidence and you know you've been working as a nurse for the last many years, it's easy to crack the interview. So one of the things you have to understand is you have to read through these policies. You have to understand the basics of it. Second question you'll be asked, if you're an elderly setup will be safeguarding or elder abuse policy. So there will be questions that you can expect which can be derived from safeguarding policies or elder abuse policies. This is quite common for people those who are working in a residential setting or long-term care facilities. Guys, you have to understand there are different types of interviews when you're applying for a job. I mean, it again depends on individual, the style of the DON. I mean, for me, personally, for myself, I love psychometric interviews. I mean, through my interview pattern is entirely different. I don't follow a particular questionnaire. I won't follow a set of questions. I know what I'm expecting of my CNM or my staff nurse or whichever role I'm recruiting for. So the first thing I would be asking is open-ended questions. I'll be asking them more and more questions in detail. I want to know exactly what kind of knowledge, skills, and attitude that person has so that it can benefit the organization. So that sort of interview system is very much relaxed. You'll be sitting and you'll be talking, you'll be communicating and conversing for a period of time. There won't be direct questions thrown at you. It'll be like putting a couple of scenarios here, putting a couple of scenarios there. We're trying to communicate and answer. There's a lot of to and fro sort of communication happens in a psychometric interview. One thing you have to understand is you have to be careful is this. It is an interview. It might sound like a friendly talk, but the interviewer is actually trying to analyze your skills, knowledge, and attitude. And the most important thing for me is the A word. That's attitude for me. Knowledge and skills can be taught to anyone, but the attitude is incredibly important. So guys, let's jump back into the questions again. As I mentioned, the first question or the important question you might be asked is medication management. The second one will be safeguarding or elder abuse if you're working in a long-term or a residential setting. The third question, which is closely related, is called absconsion policy. Again, it can be related to long-term facilities, acute facilities, and different sort of facilities where there might be a huge risk where a patient or a client or let's say a resident can actually walk out of your ward, your premises, or your unit. The situation arises, you might have to deal with it. So the DON or the recruiter want to know whether you are capable to make an informed decision. What would be your plan of action on that particular day or on that particular event? So guys, you have to read the absconsion policy. I'm just giving you pointers so that you know where to go and what to read and where to start. Infection control and prevention is on everyone's mind, so you can expect there will be a lot of questions related to infection control. Again, guys, this is day-to-day, day in, day out, you're practicing donning and doffing of your PPEs, COVID management, COVID outbreak management, all these things. You're doing it every single day. It's, now you have to sit down and kind of structure and try to rewind yourself before the interview. Okay, what would I do as a CNM? Because the questions or the scenarios will be like this. Shri, what would you do if you came to know that one of the resident is positive? So I have to, as an interviewee, I have to actually answer proper in a structured manner. So my DON or my line manager knows, okay, Sri knows how to manage if I'm not here, or if the management is not here, Sri is well capable to manage that. The next question is all about audits. Audits are a big part of any management, and an efficient manager or a management can only perform when they do audit properly. We all have a general misconception that auditing and finding an error, finding a problem is a negative thing, that you have to make sure that you don't find any negatives. No, guys, that's incredibly wrong. When you do an audit, the main purpose of audit is to better your services. better your product or better your services. For example, we're talking about nursing care at the moment. So when you do a particular audit, let's say audit on falls, for example, or audit on infection, for example, let's say on the falls. So when you do an audit on your unit level, you see how many falls happen on a particular period of time. You will take a period of time and you calculate how many falls happened, what kind of time frames they happen. Look at different sort of pointers to see where and how and why. You're trying to understand and analyze why these falls happen and how can I prevent them, because being a manager, it's efficient to actually prevent a situation before it arises. So you're always trying to mitigate, you're always trying to understand where can be a risk and how can I minimize or prevent, or how can I reduce the risk, which can in turn lead to a bigger problem. So that's where the audit comes from. So audits can be of different levels, where they can be daily audits, you have weekly audits, you have fortnightly, 3 monthly, you can do 6 monthly, yearly audits. So it all depends again on individual organizing structure, on individual nursing homes, hospitals, units, wards. They all have different structure. So all these nursing homes, all these organizations have different structure, and according to that, they have devised their own audit structure. So an efficient audit is you do an audit for a period of time, you identify an issue, you find the root cause of an issue, you try to fix the issue, or you try to put systems in place so that that particular issue is fixed. And then after a period of time, you go back and re-evaluate or re-audit the same problem. So let's say falls was a bigger issue for a period of months, and you did an audit for last 3 months and identified an issue, you did a root cause analysis, and after that you put a CAR, which is a corrective action request, and you educate your staff. You see if there's an education problem, you educate your staff. If you need more training, you bring more training. If you need more supervision, staffing issues, you will identify where it went wrong, you implement it. And then after 3 or 4 months, or maybe after a month, depending on the severity of an issue, you go back and revisit the audit again. You go and do it again and identify whether you fix the problem. That's the basis of an audit, guys. It's a lot of things to know, isn't it? Don't worry, guys. These are the things that you are doing unknowingly. As a nurse, we're doing audits every single day. I'll give you a prime example. After giving your medication, you always go back and check your MAR sheets, right? That's a kind of audit. You're trying to understand, okay, did I miss any signature? Did one of my colleagues miss any signature? Did any resident miss any of their dosage? That's a type of audit. Simply said, auditing is basically trying to understand and preventing and identifying is there any problems and trying to fix it. That's where the audit is. So every single day we're doing audits. So we have to understand, the more we get familiar to it, the more efficient our services will be, the more easier our workplace will be, the more structured our day-to-day running of the place will be. One of the other important questions which I would ask is to a young CNM like you will be about policies. I mean, guys, there are so many schedules of policies that any nursing home or any residential setting should follow. The important policy which a CNM should follow will be Schedule 5 policies. It's a big folder which is available in your nurse's station or your manager's office. Just go and read it out, guys. That is basically the Bible of how a residential setting, how a intellectual disability setting, how any sort of settings has to work. There will be a lot of questions coming from Schedule 5 policies. This video is going to be long. Guys, I want you to sit down, relax, have a cup of tea in front of you, and just listen to the video, because I know for a fact that if you're going to attend an interview, being a CNM or a senior staff nurse, an Adon interview, there are certain things what any director of nursing might ask, and I want you to be fully prepared when you go in. So look, let's kind of discuss through this video and try to understand what exactly a DON like me would be asking you when you're actually sitting on that hot seat. Now, as we are halfway through our interview process, one of the important questions you might be asked is rostering and skill mix. So rostering, you might have 20 or 30 staff under you, or you might be managing a ward. Your Adon or DON might ask you to do, or you might be allocated to do X amount of rostering for your staff. So that might be one of your responsibilities. And every individual nursing homes or residential settings or acute sectors, they all operate in a different way. Some places the DON does the whole roster. Some places, CNMs, even senior staff nurse who might do a roster. So you have to familiarize yourself to how to do a roster. I mean, I'm not saying you to learn Excel. I'm just asking you to understand about skill mix. You need to understand about skill mix, gender mix. These kind of things are very important. Skill mix is you have to always allocate a senior member of staff at a particular given shift. You cannot leave newer member of staff. I know there are staffing issues and different sort of problems which can arise on a day-to-day situation, but if you're aware about skill mix, you're trying to mitigate that risk. You're trying to identify who is the strongest member of your team and which member of team, and to allocate them together to render efficient services. That's what I call as efficient rostering. Planning and organization skills. As a CNM or as a manager, one of the key qualities you have to have is planning and organizing your day, your week, your hour even. You have to make sure that you plan ahead and execute your plans in a timely manner. This might be one of the questions what you might be asked. Planning and organizing. How will you plan your day or plan your week? Give me an example. You'll be thrown a scenario or you have to throw a scenario. That's how you can answer that question. Ninth or second last questions will be risk assessment and analysis. So as I spoke to you earlier on about audits, one of the things which stands out always in my mind is when we do an audit, it's a way of assessing a risk. So you understand there is a potential problem. You understand there are a lot of faults happening in your unit. That's a potential problem. That's a risk as well. So risk to the residents. So you're trying to understand and trying to assess. So the way that you can assess a risk is through risk assessment. Risk assessment, identifying through audits, doing your root cause analysis. That's your analysis, root cause analysis, identifying your problem and trying to implement certain systems that you can actually prevent the risk or a potential problem from happening again. So risk assessment and analysis can be closely linked with your audits. I'll repeat again, once you do an audit, you will identify a risk or a problem. You put systems in place, you identify root cause analysis, you do a root cause analysis, you identify a risk or a problem, you put systems in place, you implement the problem, you implement the systems so that the problem is reduced, and then you go back and reassess again. So that's all about risk assessment. An efficient manager will always try to mitigate the risk, try to understand the risk or the problem and try to prevent it before it happens again, before it becomes a bigger risk or a bigger problem to the patients or your clients. Which brings me on to my last question, which is HIQA notifications and HIQA standards. The healthcare sector is governed by HIQA, and they have certain set amount of standards which every sector has to follow. And I'm going to place a link in the description below where you can actually read through it and understand it. You definitely have to read through it. You don't have to memorize it, but you have to read through it. As a CNM, you have to know what are the HIQA standards, what are the notifications that you as a CNM might have to send on a particular day. So these kind of things, again, questions will be asked. So you need to read through the HIQA standards, HIQA notifications. So guys, before I wrap it up, I'm going to give you 4 or 5 important things to read. First thing is National Standards for Residential Care Settings for Older People in Ireland, which is 2016. Then you have Health Act 2007, Schedule 5 policies, as I mentioned, Schedule 5 policies, which is available in your nursing home itself or your ward. Then the last thing which I want you to read is Regulation Handbook, a guide for providers and staff of designated centers. So these are the important things to read, and I have the links available in the description. Just go and check it out, guys. Voila, you're watching till the end, and here is the pro tip for you. Guys, if you're actually presented with the most difficult question and you don't know the actual answer for it, you can use this in any scenario. You could always say that I would follow the policies and procedures in this center or in the center which I'm going to work. So you have to say, I will follow the policies and procedures of the specified unit or the specified center. So you can actually change it according to your interview situation, but you can always say that I will follow the policies and procedures of the center. That's one pro tip. The second tip that you can always say is I will always engage with my line managers all the time. The line managers, your line manager, always love to hear that you're actively engaging, you're actively communicating, you're actively conveying your situations or messages to your line managers. So that's what you have to say. That's the second tip. That's a bonus. And another bonus tip which I'm giving you is you will always consult, or you will always ask, you will always communicate with your line manager. So guys, I hope you will perform well in your interview. I wish you best of luck from bottom of my heart. If you have any pro tips, any general tips in general, please shoot down as a comment below. It'll definitely help all of our viewers. And guys, as I always say, stay happy, stay focused, and the universe will work for you. Until next time, Sri Iyer signing off. Bye.